Good morning, everyone. I won't add any more introduction. I think I need to work on my bio a bit slicker. But thank you very much, Susan. I'm doing a bit of an experiment today. When I spoke with Susan about speaking in this slot, and it's quite short notice, wasn't it? Initially, I thought I had spoken about a year ago around, I just joined SMI. I was talking about some of the hopes and aspirations of developing a program of collaborative cross-cutting research. Initially, I thought, well, after you're 1 year on, kind of thing. But then I thought a little bit, I was trying to put myself in your shoes about what actually might be interesting. One of the things I've just been doing is teaching on Anglo-American sort of top-level leadership training course for their staff. And this was actually last week in South Africa. And it was a privilege to teach on the course, but I also thought it might be interesting to distill some of what Anglo are teaching their emerging leaders now, and sort of talk a little bit about where the industry is sitting, what it's trying to train its leaderships, its younger emerging leaders to address as they move forward in there. That's my phone, if you want, so don't worry about it. What they're trying to equip their young leaders to deal with. So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the material that we were working with last week, and then I thought I then might sort of bring that back into the SOI environment and some of the things I'm doing here at the University of Queensland, and reflect a bit on some of the challenges of actually delivering on the kind of strategy that we now have in the Sustainable Minerals Institute, of strong disciplinary centres with cross-cutting programs over the top. So I've got two parts, a bit of an experiment. I'm going to try and make it a little bit interactive, a little bit reflective and a little bit thoughtful. There are no answers here, more questions than answers, but that is the world that we are living really at the moment. So I talked a bit about sort of working on this leadership training course. It's called Game Changers, and Anglo have a leadership academy, and they have a whole range of training offerings to develop their staff in there. And Game Changers, which is the program I'm working on, is now the sort of top level before you're into sort of director level training. And what's interesting is it's now there, it's branded Game Changers, it's the pinnacle of their leadership academy, and it's actually emerged from a very long association between the Centre for Social Responsibility in Mining, the Cambridge Institute for Sustainable Leadership, and Anglo, who've been working together for 10 years on training and professional development around initially social performance and social responsibility. Then that developed into training around sustainability management, and for a long while it was called the Anglo Sustainability Management Program, and now it is this sort of pinnacle of their leadership training. And I think that alone reflects a maturing and an evolution of what the industry thinks its leaders needs to engage with. So to go from, we're going to train our social professionals around social performance, to we're going to use this course to train our leaders around navigating the complex environment that the resources sector is. That's a very big shift in mindset around what's important to effectively lead a resources operation. Now the program that I was teaching on has underpinning to it a theory of leadership through change that primarily comes out of MIT, and it's underpinned by a lot of the leading system thinkers, particularly in the US. Primarily it uses a process of something called the U theory, and I'm going to run a video in a minute, but initially what we were doing last week was actually deconstructing a lot of people who were coming in. We had a couple of general managers there, we had many people who are in senior roles in production and operations. There was people coming from the exploration field, corporate head office, thinking about commodity predictions, and a lot of on-ground people who are dealing with community relations, human rights, and environmental performance. And what the program actually does is it brings them in, and then last week was about encouraging them to discard their past patterns of thought. So to actually just put to one side a whole load of training and development and experience so that they could open up a little bit to seeing things from other points of view. So we were taking them down this left-hand side of this U to really start thinking about themselves as an individual, their role in the system, and what that means for the change. I mean, in a couple of weeks' time, over in Chile, we'll reconstruct them again at the other side of the U, which is going to be good. But at the moment, we're doing a lot of therapy, a lot of one-on-one coaching and mentoring. But what I'd like to do is to just run this theory. This theory has really been developed by an individual called Otto Scharmer. Don't know what's happening with the mouse. Yeah, there it is. And I'm just going to run this little, it's only 3 minutes video, that will tell you a bit about where Otto Scharmer is coming from, and many of the change agents and change
We live in an age of profound disruption.
are coming from this point of view.
Where something is ending and dying, and something else is wanting to be born. What's ending and dying is a civilization that's built on a mindset of maximum me, of bigger is better, and of special interest group driven decision making that has led us into a state of organized irresponsibility. What's being born is less clear. It's a future that requires us to connect with the deeper level of our humanity, to discover who we really are and who we want to be as a society. How can we build the capacity to sense and actualize a future that we feel is possible, we know is possible, but that isn't quite there yet? That question is at the very heart of this course. I'm Otto Scharmer, Senior Lecturer at MIT, and I will be facilitating your journey through ULab, transforming business, society, and self. Guiding our approach will be a method that is based on sensing, connecting to our deeper sources of knowing, and action learning. While the method itself is new, many of its principles have been known by change makers for generations. In fact, in the Western world, you can trace some of its foundations to this place, Walden Pond, just outside of Boston. Here is where Henry David Thoreau came in order to connect to the deeper essence of what his life and work was about. Think about the influence that his writing had on social movements around the world. What all these movements share is an understanding that to really profoundly change the world requires us to connect to our emerging self. And in order to discover who you really are, you need to go out into the world. Many people say, for all the talk about change, it rarely ever happens. But in my lifetime, I have seen tectonic shifts several times. I saw it when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989. I saw it when the apartheid system in South Africa collapsed, and we witnessed the peaceful transition into the post-apartheid era. And I'm seeing it now with the rise of China, as the center of gravity of the world economy has been shifting from the West to East Asia. And yet I believe that the most significant disruptive change of our generation is yet to come. It has to do with the transformation of capitalism itself. The transformation of capitalism depends on our ability to reshape how we connect to each other, to the system, and to ourselves. So join us in ULab, transforming business, society, and self.
Okay, so I mean, at one level that is an advertisement for a course. You're welcome to go and sign up to the course. You could just search YouTube, and there's a lot on this kind of stuff. It's a bit very high level, but it's a lot of what is influencing leadership development and training at the moment out there in the major corporations, and it's now coming in quite a major way into the resources sector. And you're seeing big shifts in the way leaders in the resources sector are talking about issues. You've only got to look at Andrew Mackenzie's recent comments about climate change and about the importance of doing everything we can to address climate change. I don't think he would have made those statements 3 years ago. So we are in a huge time of change. I showed that video to my husband yesterday. He's an exploration geologist. Showed him all this global stuff about, connecting self and harmony, and all he could say when it was finished was that they'd used the word tectonic in the wrong context. So, which is a pattern of thought, if you like, that meant that a lot of the message in there was put to one side because he had a pattern of thought focused on a particular area of expertise that he had, and a way of using his expertise as a metaphor that he didn't quite gel with. I love my husband very much. I just found that so typical. Anyway, so you can see that there's a sort of underlying approach there to what the Game Changers program is trying to do, which is to actually say this is not just about your expertise and getting better mastery in your expertise. This is about connecting in a different way to other people's expertise. And so a lot of what we were doing last week in terms of discarding past patterns, we did a lot of this is what's happening in the world, global mega trends, human rights issues, a lot of really hammering home a whole lot of things that are shifting around the resources sector. But core to what we were doing was trying to get these individuals who were all amazing, very diverse group, very smart group, to actually suspend their cleverness. To say, we know you're clever, we just want you to put that to one side. You don't need to prove it to us. And to sort of suspend the voice of judgment. We're clever, therefore we need to judge something and decide what our view is on it. And to suspend the voice of cynicism. Right, okay, but that's not really going to happen, is it? And to suspend the voice of fear. Oh, that's a bit out of the box. I'm not quite sure I like that way of thinking. Just to put them to one side, in order to really sort of see what's happening around the world with fresh eyes. And we took them out into a number of the informal housing in and around Cape Town, which is quite confronting if you don't normally get out into informal housing situations. In order to try and encourage them to let go of a lot of the mental models that we train for in order to get through the early stages of our career. And then when we're in, as I say, when we're in Chile, we're going to be sort of working with them on sort of rebuilding, I suppose, some mental models that allow for a greater receptivity, if you like, to other people's ways of thinking about the world. So a lot of the key messages we were going through was about we need to think about the whole system and the role of the resources sector in that system and your role in the resources sector in that system. Encouragement to listen, experience and engage with other perspectives, would be quite a bit around dialogue. Thinking about value, what is value? from a whole range of different perspectives. And what does that mean in terms of the value creation that happens from mining and resources? I put the definition of a wiki problem up there. We're talking a lot about wiki problems in this course. Wiki problem is a problem that's difficult or impossible to solve because there's incomplete or contradictory knowledge. The number of people and opinions that are involved is very high. It's really irritating, isn't it, when you have to pay attention to lots of other people before you can, you know, they don't just come to see your answer as the right answer. There's a very large impact to this problem, and it's highly interconnected with other problems. And that, for me, is a really good summary of some of the challenges that are being faced in the resources sector, where it has to think about how does it contribute to climate change, how does it contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, how does it do that in a way that doesn't adversely impact or minimise the adverse impact and cause greater problems with inequity, inequality. These are really, really challenging issues in the industry. And because they're challenging, and because they're wicked, and because there is no real playbook to do this, we actually talked a lot about ethics in leadership on this course. It's quite funny actually, the sort of Desiree Shuck, who sort of leads the whole development program in ALA, did a piece on what the Leadership Academy is about, and she was asked, well, what does it mean? What does a good leader look like from your perspective? And she said, I don't really know, I just want you to go out and lead. And then that was it. Which actually was really quite a powerful message, because we're not in a place anymore where we know what it is, where we're going as a society. And so this idea, the group worked a lot with this idea that there's no real playbook. And to help them think about that, we did actually ask them to think a little bit about their own integrity, what's important to them and what is valuable for them. And to do that, we used the trolley problem or the tram problem. Is anyone aware of this? Okay, so this is a bit more of an interactive thing. So this is a tram here, or a trolley if you're from America. And there are 5 people on it, and it is racing out of control down a very big hill, and it will crash into a wall, and all 5 people will die because it's so out of control. And then all of a sudden, Martin, do you mind if I pick on you, Martin? You realise you're standing next to a lever, and if you pull that lever, you will actually divert the tram onto another bit of rail which runs out into a sandpit, and everyone will be saved. Problem is, there's someone standing on that rail, and they'll be hit by the tram and killed. Do you pull the lever? Or, rather than putting you on the spot, because this thought experiment is done a lot, do you think most people would pull the lever or not?
I think most people
probably would. Better to save 5 people by killing one. It's kind of a maths sort of question. And that's certainly what most people said they would do. Let's shift the parameters of the experiment a little bit. And how do you think people would react if the person who is in the sand pit was known to them? Maybe marginally, but was known to them. Does that change the decision, do you feel? Martin saying yes. Why does it change the decision? Same outcome, say 5, kill 1. The value of that life to you personally is higher. I'm not telling there's no right or wrong here. We're just asking you to consider value and how that informs decision-making processes. So another thought experiment, okay? Still got 5 people on the tram, it's still racing out of control. You're standing next to a rather substantial individual, and if you push them over, they'll actually stop the progress of the tram and save 5 people, but of course they will be. Do you think most people would do that? Malcolm, you say no. What do you think?
It's too personal.
And you're actually doing something. There's a bit of a difference, isn't there, between pulling a lever and touching hands on someone and pushing them. So again, what's that telling us about our choices when faced with a crisis situation? And here's the one I find really interesting. 5 people running down a hill. You buy the lever again, and you can either send it to the left or to the right. On the left is, unfortunately, an old lady, an older individual is crossing the rails, and on the right, someone, a small child is playing on the rails. I'm not going to ask you what choice you will make. I'm going to tell you what generally happens with that thought experiment, which is that people from a Western culture, when pushed to say what they would do in that situation, and many people do not want to even think about it, they will pull the lever that sadly kills the older person, because in Western cultures, children are our future. But if you're from a more Eastern culture, you will pull the lever that will sadly kill the child, because older people are have wisdom, they're the people that are going to educate and bring and lead. And the thing I think is really interesting about that, I often think about that in terms of automated cars. So I mean, if you have an automated car and you're trying to program the rules of what the car will do in different situations, do we end up with bespoke programs going into our automated cars? I'm not going to try and answer that. I'm sure there are some very clever ethicists thinking about that problem as it is.
That's one of the biggest problems currently with the autonomous car situation on normal roads, on public roads, is that they cannot agree on how to set up those algorithms, because they can detect children, people versus other cars versus what actions a car will have onwards. That's one of the big problems with autonomous vehicle control now.
So I'm just trying to unsettle you a bit with some of these thought processes, because these are the kind of thought decisions that we're moving into a world now. These kind of decisions have real tangibility. People are having to think about these things, not just thought experiments, not just as commentary and observations on society, but in terms of what do we as individuals do, and how does that affect what happens to the system. So we talked a bit about, actually we did do a quick run through moral philosophy. I'm not going to do that here today, other than to say, back in ancient Greece, where you had logic and reason coming out of Socrates and Aristotle, they were also very closely aligned. They understood that there's an area around metaphysics, which is where you sense things. They're not necessarily known, they are part of who you are as an individual. And then as we moved through, particularly the age of enlightenment, around the sort of 15th, 16th and 17th, and you had Foucault is often talked about as the sort of father of science. And his ideas, which have really influenced modern scientific method and scientific process, is that value is really encapsulated in what can be known. So science is about working out what can be known. And that kind of marginalised a lot of the sort of more intuitive, sensing kind of aspects of how we as individuals live in the world. And then what's happened a lot in the late 19th and 20th century with people like John Rawls, Martha Nussbaum and people like that, is there's an attempt to try and bring some of the issues on what is the right thing to do, what is the wrong thing to do, how do you determine that, how important is belief and culture, they're trying to sort of, there is a move that is trying to, again, bring science and evidence and fact and knowledge alongside this kind of more intuitive sensing, belief and culture. Peter Singer, who's Australian, Practical Ethics, that's actually quite a good treatise around Western philosophy. My apologies, these are largely Western philosophers, that's my background, that's my culture. In Eastern culture, you have always had much more of a sense of harmony, balance, family, society, right from sort of Confucius all the way through to the way Buddhism is now practiced. So just thinking about some key ethical principles that are guiding, could be guides for leadership in the resources sector. There is the golden rule, do unto others, very strong in the resources sector. It drives a lot of the culture around mind, health, safety and well-being, which is people should not go away from work any worse than they were when they came to work. And the other ethical principle that is really strong in the industry is the one of utilitarianism. And that is the one that drives we'll kill one person to save 5 people. That's the one that we often use when I'm out there and talking and I say, look, you've got to have a resources sector because you want all this stuff. Therefore, you have to have a resources sector, work with us on making it better. That's utilitarianism. A principle that is very dominant, particularly if you're in Centre for Social Responsibility in mining, is the one about distributive justice. What is fair if you are going on somebody's country and extracting value and making a big business about it? What is fair for all the other people who are impacted by that process? And that's where a lot of impact assessment, a lot of the movements around how do you be several people, do you be several people, how do you make those choices? And then finally there's the ethical principle around rights focus. And this is really coming up the radar on the resources sector radar quite fast at the moment, prompted by the agenda on human rights. So rights is about how do you protect and advance individuals' human rights? How do you make sure that the rights of the least advantaged are protected when those who are very advantaged are doing whatever they're going to do to society? The problem is, I'm sure all of you recognise these 4 ethical principles. Depending on which one you choose to direct your action, you actually have different outcomes. And that's where leadership comes in, because you're actually having to make decisions and choices as a leader in the resources sector that sort of look at the difference between these and makes a choice. So just to finish off part 1, and I won't go very long, I suppose the key messages that I'm taking from what I've seen happening in the resources sector in the way that the major mining companies are training and developing their emerging leaders is, and none of these will be new to you, but is a real focus on the fact that expertise doesn't exist in isolation. Systems are not always predictable, so we have no playbook. And underpinning all of this is you've got to talk, you've got to work with people, you've got to have dialogue, you've got to collaborate. Which kind of brings us on to the research environment that we're in, where, the strategy we have in SI is now very much about collaboration, reflects the idea of collaboration for impact, which is the UQ kind of sort of strategy. And this is hard to do in a research environment. And I quite like this diagram because you can imagine what's going on here. These individuals are trained to defend their point of view against critical peer review. It's not very collaborative, is it? It's actually quite a sort of antagonistic concept. I'm not saying it's wrong, it's fine. That is the scientific method. That's what, encourages us to excellence, encourages us to quality, ensures excellence and quality and rigor in the scientific method. So I'm not challenging that principle. What I'm saying is that principle makes it hard for us to then think about collaboration. So I came in a year ago to build a cross-cutting program, getting everyone to collaborate, not just between centres, but also out into the university on transforming the mine life cycle. And up here is just a picture of the circular economy. It's one that I quite like now, actually. And what I managed to achieve, because the first thing you've got to do when you try to set up an initiative, you've got to get some money so that researchers can see that there's a reason to come and talk to you. So I've been very much focusing on that. And you often have a choice when you're setting up a new initiative. Do you go for the industry money first, or do you try and find other sources of money first? And again, no right or wrong answer, but just ask yourself the question, if you go for the industry money first, are you really going to be setting up an agenda that is going to change the industry? It's difficult to see that happening. The industry's job is not to set up transformational research programs, it's to improve what they do and deliver against their objective. So a choice I made was I was going to try and go for money from the university first, so that I then had some funds I could bring people in and use that to then leverage industry funding. Not least because if you walk around SMI, everyone is working flat out. People do not have capacity to just drop what they're doing at the moment and come and think about new ideas. So we made a bid to the university for a significant sum of money over 5 years so that we could grow something, we could bring new people in. And the kind of response that we got was, and there was a lot of industry support for what we were trying to do, but none specifically signed up on the table. And what we got back was $500,000. That's a good outcome, but it was a fraction of what we were asking for over 5 years because the university wanted us to go out and get industry money. The reason for telling you that story is to highlight one of the big challenges of collaboration in a research environment, particularly one that is very applied, like the Sustainable Minerals Institute is. So we have the university saying, get industry money first, we have industry saying, get other sources of money first. Where do you go? How do you actually achieve to do something quite different? So anyway, we got $500,000, so that's good. What we're going to do with our $500,000 is we've got quite a simple strategy now. We're really just going to focus on using that money in two areas. One is to develop a global tailings research consortium. And what we're trying to do there is not to replace all the great work, tailings-related work that's being done around the world, but to try and establish the connections and the networks and the systems to promote real collaboration between them. At the moment, you tend to have, I work on making the tailings dump stand up. That's the most important thing to do. I work on thinking about asphalt drainage. That's the most important thing to do. Neither is right, neither is wrong. They're both important. They tend to operate in separate dimensions at the moment, depending on who the client is. So with the Tailings Consortium, we're trying to generate some funds, seed some funds, and then generate some more funds to actually promote collaboration and thinking that connects the geotechnical people with the geometallurgical people, because I'm sure Kim can do some clever stuff in the processing plant that will make a difference in the tailings dump. So we're trying to sort of promote that kind of collaboration. And we're out there at the moment saying, yes, we'll be able to integrate all of this. But we can't do it easily, even within SMI, as I think Martin will attest. I thought to myself, right, I'm just going to find out what we're doing in SMI that's tailings related. And before I go and talk to people, I'm just going to query our project management system. So I said, right, okay, give me all the projects, tailings related. I got about $10 million worth of research. That's quite impressive. With one exception, all those projects were sitting in CMLR. And they were all around the environmental aspects of tailings. Now I know that there's huge amounts of tailings related work that's being done in other centres. But we're not, you know, the problem was in the way I interrogated the database. I just looked for tailings in the project title. But you see the problem, when you have something like tailings, and you have lots of people thinking differently about how to do tailings related work, how do you get a sense of what the whole is? Get a sense that the whole is much greater than the sum of the parts. So that's one area that we're going to move to, and that is one example of the challenges of doing collaborative research, is just finding the resources to get people in the room together and then finding out what they're doing in a way that produces a common language. And the other tack that we're taking in transforming the mine life cycles is around scaling up closure-related work research and really putting SI and UQ at the forefront of leading closure-related research. There's already a consortium established within the Centre for Social Responsibility in Mining that looks at the social aspects of closure. But the other thing that I've been spending a lot of my time on is working to set up a CRC in closure. And you can read all the stuff here. We've just submitted a bid into the CRC, stage 1, for a CRC in transitions in mine economies. And you can see here we've pulled together a lot of researchers, some METs, some industry sponsors, with an idea of what we want to do. I'm a bit grayer than I was before we started this process. I'm just sort of aware of time, so I'm not going to go. I'm actually not going to go into the detail of the hassles and the difficulties of bringing up a CRC. It's also a very rewarding experience, but I've got to tell you, it's all about people. It's all about getting people who want to make a difference by putting one of this up in a room and working together, and that can be quite a challenge. We've had one failed attempt last year, where we positioned the CRC around all the widgets and gadgets that can be done to improve closure and enable the mining industry to relinquish its license, because that's what the industry really wants. We didn't get through, and the feedback he gave was, well, the mining industry should be paying for that. So why do you want significant $40 million worth of funding from the federal government? So this one is now much more positioned around how does a region that is very, very dependent on resources transition through the mine life cycle, and particularly beyond the mine life cycle. Very different value proposition. In there, Programme 3 there around operational solutions, which is going to be led by SLI, is about doing really cool things around closure on the mine site. But it's the third programme rather than the first programme. So a lot of this is around language. So my kind of finishing thing around, you know, in the applied domain, Anglo is out there teaching its emerging leaders that they don't exist in isolation, that collaboration is important. In the research environment, we're trying to build collaborative research. The big challenge is we're going from this kind of thing, herding cats, where they're all going in different directions. They're all beautiful cats, but they're going in different directions, to this kind of thing. Now, at least they're looking in the same direction, but it's quite unpredictable. What would happen if a mouse ran through? But at least they're looking in the same direction, and they're all looking in reasonably good condition. So if I want to leave you with anything, it's that achieving this, in my opinion, is actually about how you operate as an individual and how you build your relationships with other individuals. And I think that's what Anglo are starting to try and teach their emotional leaders. So, some food for thought there. Like I say, it was a bit of an experiment, but I'll leave it there because that does give you for an hour to quiz me on moral philosophy. Thanks, Susan.